Ever wonder which cartoons made parents faint, critics rage, and theaters shut down? One film was secretly funded by the CIA. Another featured characters so offensive, Disney still refuses to release it. From government propaganda to racist caricatures, these weren't your typical Saturday morning cartoons. Hollywood's animation studios crossed lines that shocked audiences then and remain problematic now. Hang on tight as we dive into animation's most scandalous era. Number 10. Animal Farm, 1954. This isn't your typical talking animal cartoon. The first ever British animated feature film looks cute, but hides a deadly serious Cold War weapon. Based on George Orwell's novel, it shows farm animals overthrowing their human master, only to create an equally oppressive pig dictatorship. But here's the wild part. The CIA secretly funded the entire production to spread anti-communist messages. The filmmakers, Halas and Batchelor, had no idea they were pawns in a government propaganda scheme. The agency even changed Orwell's famously bleak ending to something more hopeful, a direct betrayal of the author's message. In the book, the other animals can't tell the difference between the pigs and humans. But in the CIA-backed version, the other animals rise up and overthrow the pig leaders, completely contradicting Orwell's warning about power corruption. The production team employed 80 animators and created over 300,000 drawings across 3 years of painstaking work. This was no small operation. They became the largest animation studio in Western Europe during production. The film's visual style was deliberately simplified compared to Disney, using flat, uncluttered background paintings and stylized character designs to focus attention on the political allegory. Critics praised its artistic merits, while British Prime Minister Winston Churchill reportedly complained that the wise pig character sounded too much like him. Despite being billed as the most controversial film of the year, it bombed financially, becoming one of the most expensive box office flops of 1954. The film wouldn't recover its budget until 15 years after its release. The film's directors had their own disagreements about the altered ending. Joy Batchelor wanted to stay true to Orwell's vision that political power corrupts regardless of ideology, while John Halas felt the new ending offered hope for the future. It wasn't until decades later that the CIA's involvement became public knowledge, adding another layer to this already controversial masterpiece. Today, it's recognized as a brilliant merging of politics and art in ways kids' cartoons never dared. Number 9. Lady and the Tramp, 1955. Disney's tale of canine romance broke technical ground as the first animated feature filmed in CinemaScope, but is now infamous for something else entirely. This seemingly innocent love story between dogs from different sides of the tracks contains some of the most cringe-worthy racial stereotypes in animation history. The Siamese cats, Si and Am, represent the most problematic elements, drawn with slanted eyes, speaking in mock Asian accents, and portrayed as sneaky villains intent on causing trouble. Their infamous song features stereotypical Oriental music cues and lyrics about destroying household items. They weren't alone either. The film parades through ethnic stereotypes with Pedro the Mexican Chihuahua and Boris the Russian Wolfhound, each speaking in exaggerated accents that would make modern viewers wince. Director Frank Thomas created the famous spaghetti-eating scene that still brings tears to animation fans' eyes. But that technical brilliance comes packaged with outdated cultural depictions. The film's animation itself was groundbreaking. Walt Disney struggled for years to communicate his vision for the adaptation to his creative leads. He wanted a style that was more mature than previous Disney films, while maintaining its appeal to families. The production cost around $4 million, a massive budget for an animated film at the time. Lady and the Tramp went on to earn over $93 million in its theatrical releases, making it one of Disney's most financially successful films. When Disney Plus finally released the film, it came with a disclaimer warning viewers about its problematic content, stating that these stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Disney's 2019 live-action remake attempted to address these issues by completely reimagining the controversial characters, casting Janelle Monáe to voice one of the former Siamese cats, now rewritten as a completely different character. The original remains a complicated mix of animation genius and cultural insensitivity that exemplifies Hollywood's problematic past and shows how much cultural awareness has evolved since the 1950s. Number 8. Song of the South, 1946. The most notorious Disney film of all time combines live action with animation to tell stories of Uncle Remus, a black man working on a plantation in the post-Civil War South. So controversial that Disney refuses to release it on home video or streaming services in the US, making it the company's most suppressed creation ever. While it falls slightly outside our time period, its impact and continued controversy throughout the 50s and 60s make it impossible to ignore. The film presents an idealized, whitewashed version of plantation life that the NAACP immediately condemned upon release. They stated that while they commended the technical achievement, the film unfortunately gives the impression of an idyllic master-slave relationship, which is a distortion of the facts. Even more shocking, lead actor James Baskett couldn't attend the film's Atlanta premiere because of segregation laws, despite Walt Disney personally lobbying for Baskett to receive an honorary Academy Award for his performance. The film's animated segments featuring Brer Rabbit were considered technical marvels at the time, seamlessly blending with live action in ways that wouldn't be matched for decades. These sequences were so beloved that they spawned merchandise, comic books, and eventually the iconic Disney theme park ride Splash Mountain, though that too has been redesigned in recent years to remove all connections to the film. Songs like Zip-a-Dee-Doo-Dah remain in the Disney musical canon, while the film that introduced them stays locked in the vault. The song even won an Academy Award for Best Original Song in 1947. When the film was re-released in theaters in 1986, it still managed to earn over $17 million, proving its controversial elements hadn't diminished its appeal to certain audiences, even 40 years after its original release. Disney CEO Bob Iger confirmed in 2019 that the film would never appear on Disney+, stating it wouldn't be in the best interest of our shareholders to bring it back, even though there would be some financial gain. Numerous petitions have called for its release with proper historical context, but Disney has remained firm in its decision. Song of the South represents perhaps the most dramatic example of a studio attempting to bury its own controversial past. Number 7. Fantasia, 1940. Disney's ambitious classical music showcase is now celebrated as an artistic triumph, but early versions contained images so shocking they've been systematically removed from all modern releases. The Pastoral Symphony segment originally featured a dark-skinned centaur character named Sunflower, who served as a handmaid to lighter-skinned centaurs, shining their hooves and carrying their belongings. Disney quietly removed the character from the film in 1969, cutting her scene so seamlessly that generations of viewers never knew she existed. The Sunflower controversy represents one of the earliest examples of a major studio altering finished content due to changing social standards. The racial implications were glaring, casting the dark-skinned character as subservient to her light-skinned counterparts in a way that echoed real-world racial hierarchies of the time. The film was also criticized by religious groups for its Night on Bald Mountain sequence, featuring demonic imagery that some felt inappropriate for children. The striking visuals of demons, ghosts, and skeletons were unlike anything audiences had seen in animation before, especially from Disney. Some religious leaders condemned the sequence for potentially frightening children and introducing them to occult imagery. Fantasia was a commercial failure upon its initial release, partly due to World War II cutting off European markets, and partly because audiences weren't ready for such an experimental approach to animation. The film cost over $2.28 million to produce, but only earned $1.3 million in its first release. Walt Disney had envisioned Fantasia as an ever-evolving concert film that would be regularly updated with new segments. But its financial failure put an end to that ambitious plan. Despite these controversies, Fantasia has been preserved in the National Film Registry for its artistic significance and innovative approach to animation. The film pioneered many techniques that would become standard in the industry and introduced classical music to generations of children. The contrast between its groundbreaking animation techniques and its problematic content makes it a perfect example of how even the most visionary works of art can be tainted by the prejudices of their time. Number 6. Dumbo, 1941. This heartwarming tale of a flying elephant contains one of the most notorious racist sequences in animation history. The crows who help Dumbo learn to fly speak in stereotypical African-American vernacular and engage in behavior that mirrors minstrel shows. Most shocking of all, their leader is literally named Jim Crow, the same name as the segregation laws that enforced racial division in America until 1965. The film was rushed into production to recoup Disney's financial losses from Fantasia, and that rush may explain why such obviously problematic content made it to screens. With a budget of only $950,000, it was deliberately designed to be simpler and less expensive than previous Disney films. Beyond the crow scene, the Song of the Roostabouts features faceless black workers toiling while singing lyrics like, "When we get our pay, we throw our money all away," reinforcing harmful stereotypes about black workers. Dumbo also contains the infamous Pink Elephants on Parade sequence, a surreal, psychedelic nightmare that occurs after Dumbo accidentally drinks champagne. This scene has drawn criticism for decades for depicting alcohol consumption in a children's film, though others defend it as a creative high point in animation history. The sequence was so distinctive that it was directly referenced in later films, including 1972's controversial Fritz the Cat. Film historians debate whether the crows were meant as affectionate or demeaning portrayals. Some point out that they're among the few characters who treat Dumbo kindly, while others note that having white voice actors perform stereotypical black characters was a common racist practice at the time. Cliff Edwards, a white performer known for voicing Jiminy Cricket, provided the voice for Jim Crow, essentially performing a vocal equivalent of blackface. When the film appeared on Disney+, it carried a disclaimer acknowledging its outdated cultural depictions. The 2019 live-action remake eliminated the crow characters entirely, recognizing their problematic nature. Despite these controversies, animation experts still praise the film's watercolor backgrounds and expressive character animation as high points in the medium's development. Dumbo's legacy demonstrates how technical brilliance and harmful stereotypes can exist side by side in works that continue to influence animation today. Number 5. The Jungle Book, 1967. Disney's adaptation of Rudyard Kipling's colonial-era stories became the last film Walt Disney personally supervised before his death. But it wasn't without controversy. The character of King Louie, an orangutan who sings about wanting to be human, has been widely criticized for racial coding and stereotyping. Louis Prima's jazz performance as King Louie created a character that many critics saw as a problematic caricature. As The Atlantic noted, Disney seemed oblivious to the idea that anyone would take offense at Louie's portrayal as a jive-talking ape who sings to Mowgli about wanting to be like humans. The film drew from source material already laden with colonial attitudes, making its adaptation particularly challenging from the start. Interestingly, orangutans aren't actually native to India, where the story takes place, making Louie's inclusion scientifically inaccurate as well as culturally problematic. The character was created specifically for the Disney version and doesn't appear in Kipling's original stories at all. This creative choice has led some critics to question why Disney felt the need to insert this particular character. The production of The Jungle Book marked a turning point for Disney animation. Walt Disney was initially unhappy with early drafts that stayed closer to Kipling's darker tone. He ordered the team to create something lighter and more entertaining, saying, "The first thing I want you to do is forget the book." This shift toward lighter fare would influence Disney's animation style for decades afterward. Despite these issues, The Jungle Book became a massive hit, earning $13 million in its initial release against a budget of approximately $4 million, saving Disney Animation from potential collapse after Walt's death. Its memorable songs and characters have made it a childhood staple for generations. The Bare Necessities was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song and remains one of Disney's most recognizable tunes. Disney's 2016 live-action remake attempted to address the original's problematic elements while maintaining its charm. The remake cast Giancarlo Esposito and Christopher Walken as King Louie, reimagining the character as a Gigantopithecus, an extinct ape species that did live in Asia, rather than an orangutan. The contrast between the film's beloved status and its criticized elements makes it a fascinating case study in how viewers reconcile nostalgic affection with growing cultural awareness. Number 4. Peter Pan, 1953. Disney's take on J.M. Barrie's classic features some of the most blatant stereotyping of Native Americans ever animated. The "What Makes the Red Man Red" sequence depicts Native characters with bright red skin, speaking in broken English, and reinforcing virtually every harmful stereotype of indigenous people. The song's lyrics suggest that Native Americans turn red when they blush after being kissed, a bizarre and offensive explanation for skin color. The portrayal was so problematic that when the film appeared on Disney+, it received one of the platform's strongest content warnings. This program includes negative depictions and/or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then, and are wrong now. Despite being one of Disney's most beloved films, its depiction of Tiger Lily and her tribe has made it increasingly uncomfortable viewing for modern audiences. The film's portrayal of gender is equally dated, with female characters fighting over Peter's attention and being valued primarily for their domestic skills. Wendy is depicted as motherly and responsible, while Tinkerbell is jealous and vindictive. Tiger Lily is portrayed as exotic and virtually speechless. These characterizations reflect 1950s gender expectations, but appear regressive to modern viewers. Peter Pan cost approximately $4 million to produce and earned $87 million from its various theatrical releases, making it one of Disney's most financially successful films. The character of Peter Pan himself has become one of Disney's most recognizable icons, appearing in theme parks, merchandise, and numerous spin-offs. What makes Peter Pan particularly interesting as a controversial film is how openly Disney acknowledges its problems today while still keeping it in circulation, a contrast to their complete suppression of Song of the South. The film remains a fascinating window into mid-century American attitudes toward both race and gender, demonstrating how even beloved classics can contain deeply problematic elements. Number 3. Fritz the Cat, 1972. The first animated film to receive an X rating shocked audiences with its explicit content and anti-establishment message. Directed by Ralph Bakshi and based on Robert Crumb's Underground comics, this film follows a college dropout cat through a world of drugs, profanity, and graphic encounters that flipped the wholesome image of animation upside down. Creator Robert Crumb was so disgusted by the film's politics that he killed off the character in his comics and disowned the movie entirely. He felt Bakshi had transformed his countercultural critique into simplistic political messaging that missed the nuance of his original work. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, Fritz the Cat became a massive success, grossing $90 million worldwide against a tiny budget of less than $1 million, making it one of the most profitable independent animated films ever made. The film includes a scene directly mocking Disney, showing Mickey Mouse and other characters cheering as the U.S. Air Force drops bombs on a black neighborhood during a riot. This rebellion against Disney's wholesome image was deliberate, with Bakshi later saying, "I wanted the conservative animation audience to freak out." His strategy worked. Theaters were picketed, prints were confiscated, and critics were divided between those who saw it as groundbreaking and others who dismissed it as vulgar trash. Bakshi's animation techniques were as revolutionary as his content. To save money, he used extensive rotoscoping, tracing over live-action footage, incorporated real photographs for backgrounds, and employed other experimental techniques that would influence animation for decades. The film's success proved adult animation could be commercially viable in America, paving the way for everything from South Park to BoJack Horseman. Fritz the Cat remains a landmark in animation history, representing the moment when the medium openly rebelled against its family-friendly image. Its legacy is complicated. Some praise its boldness, while others criticize its sexism and racial caricatures. Even with these issues, its impact on expanding animation's potential for adult storytelling is undeniable. Number 2. The Aristocrats, 1970. Disney's jazz-infused feline adventure contains one of the company's most regrettable racial caricatures. A Siamese cat named Shungan is drawn with slanted eyes, buck teeth, and plays piano with chopsticks while speaking in a stereotypical East Asian accent. The portrayal is so offensive that in 2021, Disney Plus added a content advisory warning to the film. Released at a time when representation of Asian characters in American media was already problematic, the Aristocrats amplified harmful stereotypes for cheap laughs. The character appears briefly but memorably in the "Everybody Wants to Be a Cat" musical number, leaving a lasting impression of casual racism that's impossible to ignore today. The film's portrayal of its female characters hasn't aged well either, with romance being presented as their primary motivation and value. The Aristocrats was the first Disney animated feature approved after Walt Disney's death, making it a transitional film for the studio. Its production cost approximately $4 million, and while it wasn't as successful as some of Disney's earlier classics, it still performed well at the box office. The film's development began while Walt was still alive, but he never saw its completion. Despite these issues, the film was a commercial success and became a staple of many childhoods. Its catchy songs and charming premise helped cement its place in the Disney canon, even as its problematic elements became increasingly apparent. The voice cast included notable talents like Phil Harris, Eva Gabor, and Sterling Holloway. When Disney began adding content warnings to older films, The Aristocrats was one of the first to receive one, a recognition of how dramatically cultural standards have evolved since its release. The warning acknowledges that the film includes negative depictions and/or mistreatment of people or cultures, while explaining that rather than remove the content, Disney wants to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Number 1. Pink Fink, 1964. This seemingly innocent Pink Panther cartoon won an Academy Award, but hides a darker history than most realize. The first theatrical Pink Panther cartoon follows our silent hero as he battles a little man determined to paint a house blue. What viewers didn't know was that the character's creators, Fritz Freleng and David DePatie, had formed their own studio after Warner Bros. Shut down their animation department, leaving dozens of animators jobless. The cartoon's success spawned an entire franchise, but it was born from the collapse of traditional animation studios as television began to dominate entertainment. The economic upheaval of the 1960s forced animation studios to cut corners, leading to simpler animation styles and lower wages for artists, many of whom struggled to find work during this transitional period. When Warner Bros. Closed its animation division in 1963, it ended an era of theatrical cartoon shorts that had defined American animation since the 1930s. Director Fritz the Cat, who had worked on Looney Tunes for decades, essentially had to reinvent his career at age 58. After being laid off from Warner Brothers, he partnered with David DePatie to form DePatie Enterprises. Their first major project was creating the animated title sequence for 1963's live-action film The Pink Panther, starring Peter Sellers. The character proved so popular that United Artists commissioned a series of theatrical shorts. The Pink Panther's silent comedy represented a dramatic shift from the dialogue-heavy cartoons that had dominated theaters previously. This minimalist approach was partly artistic choice, but also financial necessity. Hiring voice actors and recording dialogue was expensive. The character's silence made him appealing internationally, where translation wasn't needed. The Pink Fink won the 1964 Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, validating Freleng and DePatie's new direction. The studio would go on to create 124 Pink Panther theatrical shorts, along with other successful series. While not controversial for its content, Pink Fink symbolizes the industry-wide turmoil that transformed animation in the 1960s, forever changing how cartoons were made and distributed. Its Academy Award victory marked both a beginning and an end for theatrical animation in America. From CIA propaganda to racial stereotypes that make modern viewers cringe, these animated films reveal how much our cultural standards have evolved. They also demonstrate animation's power as a medium, capable of both delighting children and delivering political messages that shaped public opinion. The boundaries between entertainment and propaganda were often blurred, as governments, studios, and creators battled for control of these influential art forms. Which of these controversial classics surprised you most? Were filmmakers of the era truly blind to these issues, or was there something more calculated at work? Should we judge these works by today's standards, or view them as products of their time? Let us know in the comments below if you think we should preserve these problematic pieces of history or let them fade into obscurity.